Well, thank you everybody for joining us on another of these like Barbados SEO calls that we're doing with the amazing speakers that will be speaking in November. Today we've got Apurva Bose. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's VP of Operations and Strategy at Overtake Digital, and he's going to be delivering like one of the talks that I'm the most excited about because he will talk about the cultural impact on search, which sounds really, really cool. Well, thank you for joining us, Apurva.
Thanks, Patricia. Appreciate being on.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna go back to the beginning. Like, how did you get started in SEO?
So yeah, it's a funny story, but it's not really exciting or anything. When I started, I was about over a decade ago when I started. I was, in college doing my master's degree, and we had a class that we had to do a real live internship or, get some real world experience. And I was more inclined to doing public relations. That's because, my sister, she does PR, and I was like, oh, she's great, and she's one of my role models. So I decided to do that. But SEO was one of the internships where at least I applied or stream. That was the only paid internship. A lot of PR firms are unpaid. So that was how I started in SEO. But when I got in, I realized that it was so vast and there's so many moving parts. There's so much to learn that, I was instantly hooked. Like I realized during that internship that this is something I want to do in my career and I want to pursue further. So, I haven't looked back in the decade of being in digital marketing, and it's been fulfilling as a career personally and professionally. So I really have no complaints about SEO.
Yeah. Which are the things that you wish you would have known when you started in the industry that you know now?
So, one of the biggest things that I wish that I knew when I started in the industry was to constantly be learning, not just relying on one source of information. Being in digital marketing, over time, you realize that there's multiple theories, and obviously you have to test them out. But there's so many things that people have tried. It's not one size fits all. A lot of times we will listen to, the influencers, so to speak, or people that are in position of authority and take that as like, the gospel truth. But a lot of times that may not work in your case. You have to try different things. You have to always be open to change and always be able to pivot. Being too tied into one thing is not going to be beneficial for you as a person or career. So, always having that open mind is something that over time I've learned to accept and, not stress out if it doesn't work one way, because there's always another possibility.
Yeah. And in all these like 10 years you've been in the industry, what would you say, what was the biggest challenge when you were starting? And what's the biggest challenge for anyone working in SEO today? And are they different or are they the same?
So the challenge is, again, going back, it comes down to the amount of information that is available. That is very challenging. You don't know what information is correct, what isn't. And that's not to say that information inherently is wrong, but it may not fit your industry or what you're trying to pursue or what your goals are. So that's a challenge. Over time and with experience, you kind of figure out how things work and what your industry is looking for, how you can get ahead of certain goals that you have. I think it has amplified a lot more now than when I started. Not to say 10 years ago, we didn't have a whole lot of discourse on Twitter or things like that, but now there is so many people from all around the world that share knowledge. Some of it is, again, very good, and a lot of it is just, kind of snake oily, where it's not necessarily something that's going to get results, but it's clickbait, so you have to kind of understand, parse through that information. It's going to get more challenging further because as the internet opens up, as ChatGPT enters the picture, as, all these machine learning languages that are out there start getting better, it is going to be harder to decipher what is actually the truth and what isn't. It's also going to become harder to kind of understand what you are trying to do per se, and who to listen to, who not to listen to. End of the day, one of the things that I believe in, that you have to, take in as much information as you can, but kind of put that through your gut. Also, have data to back up what you're trying to do.
Yeah. One of the things that I've talked to some of the other speakers is like the impact that not only ChatGPT, but like AI will have in the industry. And it seems to be always going back to, there's always people saying, I've been hearing that SEO is dead for the past 10, 15 years.
Oh yeah.
And with ChatGPT making AI popular and bringing it into the public scene, there's a lot of people saying, like with very doomsday sort of messaging about
Yeah.
that. How do you think it's going to change the industry?
I think it's going to, obviously, there's going to be people that will use it to benefit all of us. And there's going to be people that are using unscrupulously, where it may not necessarily be a benefit. I think it is going to make certain tasks easier. Obviously, we use that to a certain degrees, whether you have keyword research or whether you're doing content editing and things like that. But I still believe that you have to have an actual editor to edit the content, not just because of grammatical mistakes, but the veracity of the information that it's parsing. It's just picking up information from anywhere on the website. Some of these websites that you may not even have, believed when you see information coming out of. So I don't think SEO is going to be dead. It is going to just make some of the menial tasks a lot easier. Some of the time-consuming tasks are going to start becoming easier, but relying 100% on ChatGPT is going to be a colossal mistake for anybody.
Yeah. One of the things that you were mentioning before that I picked up is that there's like in the industry these days, there's a lot of people just doing like a bit of a dodgy things, and a lot of people they rely very heavily on clickbait. Is that one of the worst things in the SEO industry and the digital industry these days?
I think it is, just because of the fact that, a lot of new, obviously the experienced SEOs and digital marketers know the difference. They have been through certain things. They have the experience. They understand. I worry more about somebody that's starting out.
Yeah, all the new people.
You're so enamored with people. You're so enamored, overwhelmed with the amount of information that you're receiving, that sometimes you don't even know what is right and what isn't wrong. And again, in digital marketing, it's not necessarily black and white that, oh, this is right, this is wrong. It's somewhere in the middle. It's that gray area. So I feel like, people should be helping the newbies realize, one of the biggest things that I tell anybody that we hire is, always try to do work on your own on the side. Have your own passion project or something in digital marketing, whether you like it or not, just something to train yourself so you can see results in real time and you have something to back it up. I think for the newbies, it is important to kind of take the information, again, verify it by trying, or by following some of the renowned SEOs that are really good, like Aleda's newsletter, things like that, reading those constantly, because there's a lot of information that, I've picked up from people that has helped me get better. And knowledge is power, right? So you have to continuously be learning. You can't just be in one spot where you're, oh, I think I know everything. You don't, because things change, with the advent of ChatGPT and AI, it's going to change further. So just always having an open mind and kind of going through the motions with those is going to help.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned there, like Aleda, who are the people that you think that, like just give a shout out to maybe like 3-4 people that you think like, they're reliable sources and that anyone who is willing to work in the industry should actually listen to, because what the content they give is good content.
Yep. So Andy Jarvis, he has a fantastic podcast, and he is the founder of Eximo Marketing. He's a good friend of mine. He was one of the first people that encouraged me to kind of get into speaking at Brighton and things like that. He shares fantastic information. His podcast has some of the best guests that I've heard. The second is Andy Chadwick and Suganthan. They run Keyword Insights, and they are also sharing fantastic actual case studies. And lastly, there's a group of Indian SEOs out there, Parth, Malhar, and they run their own SEO Talks podcast, which again, kind of highlights their experiences in India and how they are dealing with SEO. What are the challenges they face? How do they overcome those? So it's really good. And then end of the day, there's publications from back in the day that where I started, like SE roundtables, things like that. They have good base level information out there to read and kind of go through and understand and get better.
What's your favorite thing about like your day-to-day job in SEO? Like, what's the thing that it keeps you going?
So the first thing is the team that I have. It is a fantastic group of people. One of the things that I feel makes my day-to-day job easier is obviously having a fantastic team behind you. But in addition to that, it's watching them grow from where they started. Where they were when we first hired them on to where they are now. It is day and night, right? Like they've done so much. As far as strictly in SEO and digital marketing per se, it is just understanding that the results, you can actually track your results, trying to see the changes that you've implemented, how they affect in the longer run, in the shorter run, kind of mapping that, the growth from, again, the growth from when you took over this project to where it is now. That's fantastic to see, seeing those highs and lows, because a lot of times people get disenchanted when you see a lot of lows, but over time, SEO is going to win if you do the things correctly, if you practice them well and things like that. So growth is one of the things that I really kind of enjoy in people as well as in the work I do.
And now that we're talking about growth, like what is your proudest industry and professional achievement? Is there like a moment that you can look back like with, fondly?
So it is obviously public speaking. I was never good at public speaking in school. I was always shy. I remember my sister, when I told her I was going to be speaking at Brighton, was making fun of me. She's like, "You remember in school, in a fancy dress competition, I dressed up as a lion, but I was so scared that I didn't even roar, so I just ran off the stage." I just was nervous speaking to people in gatherings. So kind of getting over that, practicing, getting a chance to, again, one of the coolest things about digital marketing is I was able to practice it, right? I set up my own podcast. I had a few people that I looked up to, kind of interviewed them, kind of spoke to them, kind of learned from them, but also got a chance to kind of speak with them, kind of get that confidence. So I feel like from where I started, it's in my wildest dreams that I get an opportunity now to even speak at Barbados SEO, because I was happy what I was doing like behind the scenes, but I also enjoy the side of getting an opportunity to speak publicly and kind of share the knowledge and experience that I have.
Well, the talk you're going to be giving at Barbados SEO, it's titled like Cultural Impact on Search, How Our Cultural Background Impacts the Way We Search and Seek Results. It sounds really interesting as a non-native English speaker. Because I do search in several languages other than English, and you get like different results. Like and you give us like a sneak peek on the talk.
So, it's, again, one of the biggest things that like you said, I'm not a native English speaker either. So it's one of those things that, I did my schooling in English language, but we also had Hindi, which we spoke at home or with the people. The nuances go beyond just language. A lot of times people think that, oh, well, cultural background means the language. I'm sure certain things that people in France, the way they search, the way their cultural background is vastly different, and it goes beyond the results that they're seeking, not just in the language, but it's not as easy as putting it in Google Translate and being like, oh, this is what I was looking for. It's not, for me personally, coming from India to the US for university and then, becoming a citizen and all of that and getting that experience, I've realized that a lot of times, as a small example, I am more focused on, price points, that I look at for prices first and foremost. If I don't see that a result have the price point, I'm not going to go further with it, or I'm going to just try to find a result that is. So, small things like that kind of help us who we are, trying to make us into people that, that we've grown into. It never changes, over time you assimilate, you get better, you become part of a different culture, but your original, like the Indian part of me is still alive and well. And it's one of those things that is going to help me um, always see that in kind of the glasses of understanding that everybody's different. A lot of times, one of the things that I don't like about discourse is people expect results to be the same all across the board. It's not. As humans, we have different priorities, we have different needs. We're just different people. Yeah, you can group us in a generalized category, but there's so many small nuances that people have that I feel like bringing those to light is understanding those better as marketers is that sweet spot, so to speak.
Like, this is one of the first times that, when we, saw your pitch without knowing was you and stuff like that, that we've seen something like that. Do you think in the industry, the majority of people are aware that of these sort of like differences and nuances that are important, that have to do with local cultures, especially for like big brands that work across lots and lots of markets?
So I think that a lot of times that people are inherently aware, but it's so fast paced that I don't think people actually sit back and kind of go like, oh, maybe this isn't the way I should be targeting them. We always get caught up in the moment that we don't always reflect. One of the things that I've realized in my career is that, sometimes you just want to take a step back and get that big picture view where you understand that, maybe what I'm trying to target in, as an example of Canada, and I love Canada, but it's like the French Canada and France are totally different
Yeah.
cultures. They do not have the languages have some similarities, but they're more dissimilar than similar. So that as an example, understanding that what I'm trying to do in France, I can't just copy and port over into Canada. It's different. Spain, there's so many different accents. There's so many different, semantics and phonetics that they use and the words they use. It's understanding that, again, what works in Nicaragua is not going to work in Mexico, or what works in Argentina is not going to work in Paraguay. A lot of times we forget that because we just categorize it based on language. We don't categorize it to the local culture, to the local tradition, to what the people of that country are about, and sometimes not even the country, the region, regions are different. So understanding that, I think people have that idea, but a lot of times, a lot of them are under pressure, whether it's time, the limit of time that they have to do certain things in research. That's where we fall through the cracks. That's where a lot of the information just goes through the crack, because you have to just turn around and push that content, or you have to just turn around, run that campaign. You may not have chance to actually do research outside of the data that you get from the major corporations like the oracles of the world. It goes way beyond just what numbers show. It's what is inside a person, what is inside a culture, what are they all about. So I think my talk is to bring that to the forefront. I want people to kind of sometimes, and it's not always possible to do that, because I understand that you can just, in an ideal world, we would have as much time to do research as we want. You don't. Sometimes you have like 3 days to do research and run the campaign. So sometimes it's just taking that step back and understanding that there is more to people than just the language, or there's more to people than just the numbers that are showing, oh, this is a perfect area. Well, it may not be for what your brand is trying to sell. This may not be the perfect kind of campaign that you're trying to run. And I might be getting this wrong, but I know in my marketing program back in the day, I remember hearing about, I want to say it was Ford Lugo, or one of the cars Ford had launched in Latin America, and it did not work because of the simple fact that the word that they used for the car kind of translated to donkey or something like that. So people weren't buying the car. Not understanding that is, and a lot of times people in America or wherever you are, you're just like, the big wigs are just like, yeah, go ahead, that should work. It's a great car. Well, the car is great, but the cultural impact of the name, or whether it's just kind of what it stands for in that culture, may not translate into sales. So keeping that in mind.
Yeah, I know that's actually really, really interesting. So, like talking about going back to Barbados, like what are you expecting from Barbados SEO?
So, one of the biggest things that I think last year I saw a lot of tweets and, was able to find some of the videos that people had shared, some of these speakers that were out there. Martin, I follow him on Twitter, seeing the post that he'd made. I feel like it is an environment that fosters newer people in public speaking, newer people to kind of get the voices out there. A lot of times, a lot of events will have the tried and trusted speakers, where it's the same, 5, 10, 20 people that you would see everywhere. And it's great. And I'm not saying not to take anything away from them. They have earned that spot. They've provided information that's been valuable, that's helped a lot of people, but getting an opportunity for the newer people, bringing the newer voices to forefront was something that I really, kind of have a feeling it's going to be easy. Second, it's just the welcoming nature of Barbados SEO from the time that we corresponded in emails with you, kind of following Martin, seeing what he's all about as far as Barbados SEO. Those are the things that I'm looking forward to, where it is going to give me an opportunity and a platform to speak and kind of share my knowledge that, a lot of people may not be aware of. So, and in an environment that fosters patience and fosters people to kind of excel and do it at their pace. So that is what I'm looking forward to. And then lastly, the beaches. I've
Yeah,
never been to the Caribbean. I've only heard good things about Caribbean, so I'm looking forward to go to Barbados. My wife is excited. She's the one. She's like, oh yeah, we should definitely stay a week after. And
yeah.
so we're looking forward to doing some of the sightseeings and things like that.
And lastly, one of the last things is that yeah, we know we're fully aware that maybe for anyone based in America, Barbados is a bit closer than from anyone coming from the
Hmm.
UK or Europe. But how would you convince someone to just like go and come to Barbados SEO to listen to all the amazing speakers and like learn about SEO in a really beautiful environment?
Yeah. So, again, you hit it all on the head. It's one of the biggest things is learning. So if you have a penchant for learning, or if you're open to, newer ideas, wanting to get more information beyond your day to day, it's a good spot to go to events. Barbados SEO specifically, like I, mentioned previously, is giving environment and opportunity to newer speakers that may not necessarily be kind of brought in these major conferences. And a lot of times, the major conferences will have certain number of people. And again, you've heard those people over time, multiple places, which is again, fantastic. So just getting an opportunity for hearing newer voices, emerging voices in the industry is going to be fantastic. And then again, you hit the nail in the head with people, the environment is great. I mean, you're going to be in a nice sandy area. I know Martin has a lot of different things for people to do in Barbados. There's a lot of
Yep.
sightseeing to do. So, it can't get any better than being in a tropical environment where you're right by the beach, learning, but also getting time to, just kind of relax and take care of yourself.
Well, yeah, I think that's everything. So thank you very much, Apurva, for joining me in this like informal chat, and very much looking forward to seeing you and hearing you at Barbados.
Yeah, thank you.